I'm dating coach and relationship expert Jennifer Hurwitz, and welcome to Doing Relationships Right. Raw, authentic, and insightful, this podcast is a no bullshit look at all things dating and relationships. The good, the not so good, and the what the hell was that? No worries, I've got you, and we'll figure it all out together without taking ourselves too seriously here on Doing Relationships Right. Good morning. Good morning. This is Doing Relationships Right. I'm Jennifer Hurwitz, and I'm your host every Tuesday, sometimes on Fridays. I'm not really sure anymore, but I am so excited today because we're going to talk about attachment styles, y'all. You've been asking me, you've been begging me, Jennifer, talk about attachment styles. I don't know anything about attachment styles except one, anxious attachment style. Because that's me. I'm like anxious all over the place. I'm hoping to be secure. Sometimes I'm secure. I don't even know. But I have Flora Ong here today. Did I say it right, Flora?
Perfect.
I did. Flora, it's so nice to see you because I feel like we've met already and I feel like we know each other from Clubhouse and Instagram and all those good things. But Flora is an integrated attachment specialist, all the things, and a dating coach and a relationship coach. And you're amazing. And I follow you and I love you. And I think that your stuff is like super spot on. So when I have a question about attachment styles, you're where I go. You're my girl. So for all of you listeners out there who are begging me for all this, get a pen, get your notes out, get your whatever out, get ready to rewind because Flora's here and we are going to unpack everything about attachment styles and why can't women be less or more secure? I mean, is it women? Is it men? Flora, hi, honey.
Not just women. It's not just women. It's
I'm so
all
glad to hear
people.
that. All people. Yay. Hi, honey. Tell us what's up. What's going on?
Hi. Thank you for having me. And I'll do my little pitch for you. My name is Flora. I'm a dating and relationship coach and the founder of Redo Love, and I focus on attachment styles as a way to help people understand their subconscious motivations so they can release their blocks from love and find the love that they're looking for. Because that's how deep attachment styles go. As I think a lot of people have heard at least about them by this point, right? But essentially it's the way that you were taught what love is and you were taught what security means. The thing that most people don't understand is this happened before your cognitive brain was online. So this lives in your nervous system. This isn't something that you can think through. You can understand it, right? But you will still continue to react from your attachment style and act from your attachment style until you fix it on the subconscious, like deeper level, because it was set in again before you even had words or were able to form thoughts. Typically,
which is so funny to me.
Yeah,
because I'm thinking to myself, I can coach other people on how not to be anxious, but I can't help myself. Flora, I'm a mess. I'm like, why? But I'm trying, girl. I'm trying. Okay, so let's get in here. Let's get into the one thing that people, my clients especially, always ask me. It's that anxious, like, why isn't he calling me back? Why isn't he texting me back? But do guys feel that too? I feel like.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's if you have an anxious attachment style, regardless of gender, you'll feel those same feelings because that's not gender specific. That's an abandonment wound essentially that you're dealing with.
Okay, but I feel like I wasn't abandoned.
I know. Isn't that the funny thing?
What is that?
It's so crazy. Because
explain to me.
I'm going to explain.
Let's go. Be quiet.
When you're a baby, right? So the anxious attachment style in particular is formed when there's an inconsistency in the emotional attunement, right? Or emotional attention, essentially. And when it's inconsistent, right? Like as a baby, you don't have a sense of time. You don't have any understanding. All you know is that you need attention now and it's not coming to you, right? But then sometimes it does come because it's inconsistent, right? So in my case, my parents were immigrants. And so when they were available and they were around, they were amazing, they were loving, they were kind, they did all the things. But I was passed around from like grandparent to sitter to grandparent, wherever I could be. And so what that does to the child, again, before you're like thinking, well, you're just a feeling thing at that point, right? Is you're waiting for that like parent to come back. You're waiting for that love. You're waiting for that attention from your primary caretaker. And you feel abandoned, even though you're not exactly abandoned, right? Because the primary person that you want that attention from can't be there.
Light bulb moment. Yeah. So if I have 4 kids in my family and I'm the oldest, of course, like, it's like, Jen, go to school and bye-bye.
Right.
I've got 3 other kids and my parents did the best they could, right? Uh-huh. They were amazing. I thought but they had to spread out their everything to the other 3.
Exactly.
Hope you're happy, guys. Just kidding.
Right. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Thanks, Mom and Dad. I really appreciate that. I dedicated my book to you guys. Great. Yeah. I mean, seriously, I get it. And that makes total sense. It's not, I think that people think that they're abandoned and they had no love, and that's not the case.
It's not. Yeah. It's not big trauma at all. And also it's very nuanced because it's how the child perceives it, right? Even at that age, there are different kids, and anybody who's had 2 kids knows how different kids are from the day that they're born, right? I have a son and a daughter, and it's just were complete opposites, and I couldn't understand how they both, came out of me, but just like we're totally different. So it is very nuanced, and it really depends how the child is perceiving this also. So you'll have some first kids, typically the firstborn is like the more independent, the more secure, the more of a like caretaker type, right? Just because they have to be, because then they have to take care of their siblings and help out typically. And typically I would say that it's like second, third, fourth child that are more likely to be anxious because parents by the second kid, they're kind of like, we've got this, you can sit on your own. I'm going to go work or work out or do something else, but it's very, very nuanced, and there's no one specific path to it. But once you've got it, because I'm anxious too. And there's no way around it.
No. But there are things you can, this is another question I get all the time. Can you go from one attachment style to another?
So yes. And so when I say like mostly your attachment style sets in before the age of 3, before your cognitive mind is really online, but up to the age of 7, right? Because those are all your formative years. And then it can change based on like big things that happen in life, right? So you get a divorce, you're in like a secure marriage for 20 years or, some big length of time, or you feel secure, at least, even if the marriage is unhealthy in other ways, you feel secure with your partner. You know what I mean? They're not leaving you, there's no abandonment issues in that regard. And then you get divorced, and then you got to go out in the world. And now you're like, what, who am I? What am I? I'm afraid of people, or I desperately want, attention. And so it can really like mess with your, what could even have been from childhood a secure attachment, right? Just that having that big trauma can mess you up for a while. I think that people always will falter back to their original attachment style. Like if you're secure, you'll have a period of insecurity, and then you'll falter back into security at some point when you meet, a different partner, or just, through life circumstances if you're doing the work. But if you're not secure and you had a secure marriage, you will falter back to your original attachment style based on a trauma if you're not working on it and cognitive about it.
This is also, it's so fascinating to me because I have so many questions. Do you mind if I ask you another one? So what if you are securely, is there secure attached, right? There's like that kind of like
secure attachment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what if
we haven't even talked about the other 2, but
do you want to go the other? I know. I feel like, okay, wait, what should we do? Go the other 2 first and then come back?
What do you think? We should mention them because we're going to do this all in this one.
Yes. Go ahead.
Unless you just want to talk about anxious.
No. Of course I do, because it's all about me here today.
Right.
But no, I'm just teasing. Go ahead.
Well,
yes,
let's just mention them. And then, so there's secure attachment, right? Which is the healthy kinds, and the parent paid enough attention and the child grew up securely. There's anxious, which we've talked about. It comes from inconsistency. And the other big one is avoidant attachment. And most of us anxious people end up getting involved with somebody who's avoidant, which is super triggering. And so the avoidant attachment style was set in typically because of like neglectful parenting, emotional parenting, not necessarily neglectful in, maybe they were there all the time. Maybe they took them to all the classes and all the events or whatever, but emotionally they didn't know how to support the child. And so I always kind of point to the cry it out method as an example of this, that like, when we grew up, I think, that was like a big, yeah, exactly. That was like a big thing. And so, letting a child cry until they fall asleep, until they stop. What are you saying to this baby? Like, nobody is going to care for you. Deal with this by yourself, kind of thing, and that's the message internally, like, again, on a nervous system level that the child gets. And so when they grow up, they attach to things rather than people. Maybe they had a blankie they were really into. Maybe they are really like into video games and, or something like that. And they get really like set or working out or whatever, but they really prefer loner type activities, typically. And they grow up feeling like they don't need anybody, so nobody should need them. And when it comes to getting involved in relationship or having emotions that come along with relationships, it's very overwhelming for them. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to process it. They don't know where to put it. So they typically end up running, ghosting, breaking up, and not being able to really sit in the, in the relationships, in the intimacy of relationship. In a healthy way. And so that's the avoidant attachment style, which all of us anxious people know really well.
I know. I'm like, I have a question. So why do you think that anxious people find those avoidant? Because most relationships I've had since my divorce have been anxious and avoidant.
So this is where it gets like super interesting, because your subconscious seeks the familiar, right? It seeks what it knows, even if it's not healthy, even if it's toxic, even if like, and in the case of the fearful avoidant attachment style, which is the fourth one and typically the smallest like percentage of people, but like even in an abusive, like if you grew up with an abusive family, that's why a lot of people who were abused ends up in abusive relationships, right? Because your subconscious knows how to deal with that, right? That's its comfort zone. And so you seek their subconscious seeks the familiar. And so when, like for an anxious person in particular, the avoidant person presents that inconsistency, right? They're great on a date. They're charismatic typically. They're successful typically because, they're into their things, right? Not people so much. And
yes, Flora. Yes, that's it. Oh, I love this. Keep going. Yes,
right.
Yes.
And they come in and you have like a great date, and then they don't need to talk to you every day. They don't need to follow up. They'll call you when they feel like it and when they want to. When they come up from there, from whatever it is their priorities are, which is the things or the work or the exercise or the marathons or whatever it is that they're doing. And they still kind of value you in the same way, right? Like in that they're still interested, but again, they don't need that same level of connection. And so for the anxious person, that's that inconsistency. You never know when that person is going to reach out, when they're going to be available, when they're going to make themselves available, if they're going to make themselves available. Now, remember that anxious baby that was waiting for mom or dad, and never knew when they were coming, right? Because there's no sense of time and you're just kind of stuck in that space of waiting. And so you repeat subconsciously, you're repeating that cycle. And so it's the most natural place for the anxious person to be with an avoidant. And the avoidant, on the other hand, because they're lacking in this place of emotion, their emotional self, they are, kind of like wowed by the anxious person typically, at least in those first initial meetings, right? They're like, oh, so expressive, so comfortable. So, because typically anxious people are, right? And they'll like give you everything and, they're like very open and talk a lot, or maybe even too much, like maybe overshare. And so the avoidant person sees something in them that they don't have, so they become attracted to it. That said, there's a second way that the avoidant attachment style is formed, where there was enmeshment in childhood, which meant like essentially, like, let's say you had a helicopter mom and it was like super overbearing. So the child's like like has to pull back and like go inside because, the parent is kinds of too much. And so on that side, that anxious person is reminiscent of that parental figure for the avoidant as well. And so, these two are like subconsciously tied to each other, but they have completely different needs and completely different coping mechanisms, right? And so they fall in love, but they are so at odds in just the way that they function that it causes every like toxic relationship you've ever heard of,
Every single one.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all, we need to talk about the holidays and divorce. It's a stressful time for families, especially when alcohol is involved, and our friends at SoberLink want to help. SoberLink has teamed up with divorce and family law experts to provide information that offers peace of mind during the holidays. For those who still haven't heard about SoberLink, it is the solution if you are going through a divorce and custody case involving alcohol. Whether you are falsely accused of alcohol use or are concerned about your child's safety because of the other parent's alcohol use, SoberLink can help. SoberLink works to keep children safe, and its technology makes it a gold standard in alcohol monitoring systems. Don't miss out on SoberLink's free guide for the upcoming holiday season. Request it today at www.soberlink.com/DRR. That's soberlink.com. Don't you? I feel like maybe we should put this on our dating profiles. Anxiously attached. Oh, don't you think that'd be great with a little box to check off? Because this is like amazing to me.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and everybody in the world has to know what their attachment style is. It's like imperative because it dictates every way that you relate to people, not only in your love relationships, in your friendships, in your even in your career, like with your boss, right? Like with authority figures, it dictates like so much of how you are and what you do. And I'm almost like, I feel like it's become like this catch-all and people kind of think they get it, but they don't really get it.
I agree with you. That's why I'm doing this. I absolutely agree with you. I also think, let me ask you this question. When you go on a date, or when you're in, let's say you've been on 4 or 5 dates, you like this person, I feel like it's something you should talk about. Am I wrong? Because
attachment style?
Well, I mean, I'm dating someone now and we both are dating someone before. I'm so excited. And we're talking about like, he's pretty secure, which is like a really big deal. A dream. I'm like, oh my God, he's secure. And I've said to him, look, I'm kind of anxious, but I'd like to be secure. So, I tell him kind of like what my deal is. And he's like, I appreciate you sharing that with me because now I know that you need a little more X, Y, or Z.
Isn't that lovely?
Oh my God.
This is exactly why everybody's supposed to date somebody who is secure, because of exactly that, because they have the capacity to communicate. They have emotional, intimate things. And they have this like inherent understanding that relationships are I'm responsible for you to some degree, right? Like not wholly and completely, but I am responsible for how you feel emotionally. And I want to be a part of that, right? And I want to do what's right for you. Yeah. So
it's like almost weird. I'm like, what did you say? Like, wait, because I'm so used to like the opposite. You're
not going to like gaslight me or tell me that like, how dare I ask for more attention,
Right. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Cause when you're just used to what you're used to, what you know. Right. And so when something comes in that's so different, it really is unbelievable. So you have a quiz, right? On your website, redo love, but it's redo.love.
Yeah, exactly. The URL is .love, just redo.love. Yeah.
Perfect. And so people can actually go to your website and figure out their attachment style. I feel like it's the right way to do it because I feel like there's so much, we're flooded with this attachment style, like information, and I trust you. So I think that like people should go to your website. I think they're going to get, right. You're going to get your real attachment style. It's not going to be something you read and figured out.
Yeah. And more importantly, I have the quiz will lead you to a free webinar where you'll really get to understand the nuances of your attachment style. Because I will say this about any quiz, that given the day or the circumstances that you're in, because it's self-reported, right? Because you are like ticking, yes, I feel this way. No, I don't feel this way. It can, these results can fluctuate a bit. But in watching the webinar, I go into detail about how the attachment styles are formed, where they live in your body, and all the different attachment styles and how they act through all the different stages of relationship. So, if you're dating somebody and you're seeing these kind of like patterns in them, it'll give you like a good understanding of what their attachment style is. So not only yours. And you will also get a lot of obviously insight on yours. So there's, once after you watch that, you won't be guessing at all anymore. You'll be like, oh, this is so clear.
I feel like I need to do it. I'm going to hop on over and I'm going to take your webinar. Because I think maybe I am secure, Flora. You're like, no, Jen, you're not.
No, I mean, listen,
you never know.
We go through enough, and the amazing thing is you really can change your attachment style. You can adjust. Being in a secure relationship is a fast track to it, quite frankly, right? Because you start to learn that people don't abandon you, right? Or people do communicate appropriately. And so you don't feel that that high, low anxiety and then like relief, that person, they texted, oh, phew, thank God, like I'm okay for the next, hour or so.
I have some clients that I'm like, just put your phone in a cookie jar and tape it up. They're like, I'm like, girls, and I have only female clients right now, so I say girls, but okay, so I have another question. Can you stay for a minute?
Yeah,
a couple minutes. Okay. So, here's my other question. Let's say that you are with someone and they are not into the whole attachment style theory or mental health, and they don't feel like they need to do the work. Well, first of all, I would say whatever, but and their attachment style, you can pretty much figure it out, or you do the quiz and you kind of, is there a way to, I used to send my ex-boyfriend things like your stuff, like through Instagram. I'd be like, read this because you're, he's like, I'm not avoiding. I'm like, no, you really are. But do you do couples therapy too, or do you just work with one person? What do you think?
I do couples therapy, but everything has to start with either my course or the one-on-one work that I do with people, right? Because you have to know yourself first in order to understand, in order to be in relationship, right? And if you don't know and understand your attachment style, your limiting beliefs, your needs, your coping mechanisms, because it's all attached to your attachment style, it's all part of your attachment style. If you don't understand those things, how can you be in relationship in a health? So, if you don't like the word attachment style, if, somebody is like, don't put me in a box kind of thing. We all have needs. We all have coping mechanisms. We all have like a relationship to boundaries. We all have an emotional pattern, right? And a way that we react to triggers. So you have to understand that about yourself in order to be a good partner to anybody.
Agree, which is my little segue. Did you like how I did my little segue to your course that you offer, which is amazing. And it's called Finding the One.
That's right.
Finding the One, which is also on your website. So everybody go check that out. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think you just did, but.
Yeah. So my course is called Finding the One, and spoiler alert, you are the one. And so the course takes you through different exercises in order to break down your limiting beliefs and help you to understand yourself better, and not only break down your limiting beliefs, but unblock them, like really get to the heart of them. And I have a special method in there that allows you to really process and rectify it. And then, which like allows you to just move on from it. And it's really, really like magical watching it happen, because I'm working with a client right now that it's just like, I'm eating the whole thing up, because she, I often, when I started with her, she's dating somebody, he's avoidant, she's anxious, and she's, finding herself through this process. And we started, and she was telling me about this argument they had and what she said and what he said. And I was trying to take her through the communication aspect of it. You want to start with I feel statements. You want it to come from you. And she just was struggling. And now she's like on the other side of her limiting beliefs. She's she's kind of really understanding herself a lot more.
Great. I love that.
So now she's communicating with him, and I don't even have to explain to her how to communicate, right? She's telling me that she's, able to communicate clearly how she feels, what she needs, and be understanding of his needs as well. And it's just so,
I love it. And is he
so
responding
beautiful
to her?
Like as if it was, as if there were buttons to press kind of thing. You know what I mean? As if it's like an on-off button. He's planning things. He's involved. He's reaching out. He's, doing all the things that she ever wanted him to do. And it's like, it's just these not simple switches, because they're hard to, it's hard to look at yourself sometimes, but it really is amazing once you start to understand who you are. Like the reflection that has in your relationships is wild.
I think the first step is admitting. I tell my clients, I'm like, y'all need to, some people come to me and they're like, oh, no, I'm not anxious. I just like him to call me back. Or, I'm really, it's just me, and I think it's normal that I should be this way because he hasn't texted me in 3 hours. And I'm like, let's work on that. You know what I'm saying? So I think, once you can say to yourself, no, I've got some work to do, and own your shit and say, I'm going to make some changes within myself, then you can move forward and start to get to that secure place in your relationship, right? And with yourself. I think
it really is. It really does start with you. And, there's no normal, you know what I mean? There's no right. There's no wrong. And yes, some of us do need more attention and some of us need less attention. And that is perfectly okay. It really is about understanding yourself enough to be able to say, I need this, and I'm not going to stay in a situation where my needs aren't being met, right? And that's the anxious thing that doesn't happen. It becomes a fight. It becomes, no, you should be doing this for me. And that's where the unhealthy part of the anxiety happens.
So instead of you should be doing this, it's I need this. Right? You flip it.
It's I need this, and if you can't provide it for me, then I have to protect myself, and I have to care about myself enough to go and get my needs met somewhere else.
Absolutely, and I think we need to destigmatize the fact that we're asking for our needs, because I hear a lot of my male clients are like, well, she was really needy, or she was really, she acted really crazy at the beginning. I'm like, crazy, needy, let's stop. I mean, people need to ask for what they want.
They have to ask with the understanding that it's not somebody else's responsibility to do it.
Yes, exactly. Say that again for the people in the back.
They have to ask without putting that responsibility on somebody else, right? And understanding that that person may or may not meet their needs. And if they don't, like my one and only dating rule, I do not have any rules, but the only dating rule is you have to be willing to leave the relationship, the date, the match, the whatever, in order to protect your needs, your values, and and have your needs met. And so what happens where you become needy is when you ask for it, the person does or doesn't, let's say, doesn't meet your needs, and then you become needy when you're like, no, but I told you and you didn't do it. Well, why aren't you doing it? But I asked you already, but why aren't you doing it? You have to accept what the other person is capable of. And that is, again, like where that like needy part ends up happening. It doesn't happen just in saying, this is what I need,
Right. So do you suggest at that point that if they're not meeting your needs, that you're like, I'm out? Or where's your line?
Yes, and there's the interesting thing about the secure attachment style, right? That us insecure people don't understand. It's like it's so hard for us to express our needs because they were shut down in childhood in one way or another, right? Like when you have an insecure attachment style. So you have to get over this whole hump of like, okay, I'm going to have the courage to express my needs. Then you express your needs, and the person maybe met them, maybe half met them, maybe, but is trying, right? But because it was so difficult to do it to begin with, it's hard to now understand that it takes time, and it's a little bit of a stepping. Yeah, well, it takes a little time for somebody to like come around and really maybe start doing it. And so there has to be some healthy space to allow somebody to meet your needs, and then ultimately, if they're not, you have to decide when it's time for you to walk away, or when it's, when that means enough to you. But that understanding again comes from like the work, and comes from maybe working with a coach or being in therapy, right? It doesn't, because what happens a lot of times is like that person was, let's say, doing it for 2 weeks, then they stop. And then you're like, well, I asked you and you didn't. And now you're back in that toxic cycle, right?
That was my last relationship, Flora. It's 5 years. I just want to say.
We've all been there. I have 2 friends right now that are like in the process of divorce, and they're in the thick of it. So I get it.
It's just really hard. You think, oh, it's going to be different. And I mean, it's like looking back, I'm like, 5 years, Jennifer, it's like it's like what is it? The shoemaker's kids go without shoes. Is that you're like, I'm coaching. I'm like, I can coach the world, give them to me. But then I'm like, get the fuck out of this, Jen. It's like one of those things. That's okay. I learned.
Yeah.
I'm good. It's like,
no, I mean, listen, we're all human, and it's the going through it and the ability to share, which you do amazingly, that helps, that really helps others. So, just knowing that we're all in it together, right?
Yeah. Got a 3rd book out of it. You know what? There we go. I just decided. Okay, Flora, I'm so glad you were here. Tell everybody where we can find you.
You can go to my website, www.redo.love. You can find me on Instagram at redo.love, and on TikTok at redo_love.
I love your TikTok. It's fun. I'm over there at 50 years old trying to like do my thing. I'm like, what in the actual, oh my gosh. And Flora, also that's going to be all in the show notes too for everybody. I'm so glad you were here. And thank you so much for unpacking all of this, because my listeners are going to be like, it's about time, Jennifer. It's about time. Okay, fine. You know what? She's here. Okay, you guys, I brought her to you. That's it. Everybody do something fabulous for yourself today. And by fabulous, I mean, go and buy my book. There's a shameless plug for Midlife Priceless. Go buy it. There's some attachment style stuff in there. Of course, it's nothing like this. I should have talked to you before I wrote my book. I should have quoted you in my book. That would have been great. The next one. And that's it. Do something great. I don't know. Go do yoga, meditate, whatever you want to do. Just do something fabulous for yourself. And don't forget to check out Flora's online course, Finding the One. And the hint is, you are the one. And that's that. So much love, you guys. Peace, love, and truth. Take care. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Doing Relationships Right. Don't forget, if you enjoyed the show, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast episodes. And please grab my books, One Happy Divorce and Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, on my website, jenniferhurwitz.com. And look out for my new book, all about doing dating right, coming soon. As usual, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace, love, and truth.